Hi, and welcome to the Bruce Channel. I'm Bruce, and yes, it's been a while. Several weeks without a show, and nearly as many reasons. For a 2-week run, I had several auditions to work on and submit them. And once in a while, auditions are held in person, but pretty much the norm anymore is you or your agent expresses interest. They may send you lines and part of the script, and you record it. But it takes a while to learn the lines, and most of the time, there are other characters in the scene, and if there are, you have to find people to read those lines. Those people aren't auditioning, and they're not even on camera, but you have to listen and react to what they're saying. So it can involve other people's schedules. Anyway, then I had a problem with my editing computer, which I did solve. It took almost a week, and that kept us from having a show. And then there was the weather, lots of thunderstorms, and then last weekend, I didn't have the heart or the will to do a show. You see, my girl Katie died a week ago Saturday at the age of 144 months and 1 week. So I'm pretty sure you understand. Anyway, a lot has happened. I'm not sure we'll get to it all, but I mentioned the weather. June 1st marked the start of hurricane season, but it began early. For over a week it rained and rained, not nonstop, but over a week it rained several times a day, thanks to the enormous reach of subtropical storm Alberto. It moved slowly, not a lot of wind, but it brought a lot of humidity. One afternoon it rained as hard as I've ever seen it rain, ever. And then there's been lots of flooding, lots of places. Here in North Carolina, a couple of small towns have had mandatory evacuations because a mudslide damaged a dam up in the high country. And if the dam gives way, those towns will be wiped out. Sort of like a down south version of the Great Jonestown flood. Also in North Carolina, 2 people were killed when a mudslide, again, at night, mind you, destroyed their house and them. And then a week and a half ago, you probably heard this on the national news, 2 reporters from a South Carolina television station were killed covering the weather in North Carolina. They'd interviewed the fire chief about the weather, the flooding, closed roads. Minutes later, they were killed when an enormous tree, the ground below it was saturated, so it fell onto their SUV. Hurricane season is just beginning, so what can we expect? No one knows, but protestations by oil companies and their minions in Congress notwithstanding, global warming is real, and it causes more frequent and more severe storms. That's physics. All right, mudslides are bad, but there are mandatory evacuations on the big island of Hawaii. If you don't get out, they can arrest you. You can't mess with lava, of course, it's the volcano. If lava is flowing your way, there's nothing to be done but get out of the way. And it's still going, and geologists have no idea what will happen next. All right, a couple of airline crash notes. Remember Malaysia Airlines 370 that disappeared in March of 2014? The search, the second search actually, is now officially over. We'll never know why it made that left turn and flew out over the ocean. A few pieces of the plane washed up on an island, so we do know that it didn't end up in Iran, as an idiot conspiracy theorist told Fox News. Also announced a few days ago, after careful examination of the missile that brought down the airliner that was Flight 17 over Ukraine near the Russian border nearly 4 years ago. Conclusively, the missile was of Russian manufacture. Russia continues to deny involvement, but they've become pretty bad actors of late. There's the missile, the poisoning in London of a former Russian spy and his daughter. All the U.S. intelligence agencies, all of them, say that conclusively, yes, Russia did meddle in our 2016 election. Now, we've been seeing some of the Facebook ads, and those have been sourced to computers in Russia. Now, I don't know whether the Trump campaign actually colluded with Russia. There is provocative evidence, but we can withhold a final conclusion until all the evidence has been presented. Trump and his sons and his lawyers all say, no, we didn't do anything, but isn't that what Richard Nixon said? Even Trey Gowdy, the Republican South Carolina House member who led how many investigations into Hillary's email, Benghazi, It's fair to say he's partisan. He is Republican. He'd not disagree that he's partisan. But he's also a former prosecutor. And he and others have seen more than we've seen, and he says it's proper for the investigation to go forward. All right, several months ago, I told you I'd seen a film called American Pastoral, and I'd recommended it. The novel it was based on, by Philip Roth, won the Pulitzer Prize in 1997. His canon of work is impressive. And in addition to American Pastoral, he also wrote Portnoy's Complaint and Goodbye Columbus. I'd urge you to read his 2004 book, The Plot Against America. Alternative reality. Books, stories, movies, they aren't common, but neither are they rare. Amazon viewers, just recently, we got 2 seasons so far, of The Man in the High Castle. And that's an alternative reality where Japan and Germany won World War II. There's several books and movies and things that have the Confederacy having won the Civil War. Anyway, in The Plot Against America, Charles Lindbergh, who during the 1930s in real life was openly making speeches urging us to treat Hitler and the Nazis as legitimate, well, in the novel, he takes on FDR in 1936 and wins, and he promptly becomes despotic. He adopts we're good, they're bad mentality towards governance and others, even within the United States, us against them. So, that's the sort of thing we seem to see in real life today. That's all I'm going to tell you about that book. I do recommend it, but it came out in 2004. And I'll mention one other thing. Pulitzer Prize winning author Philip Roth died Tuesday, May 22nd, at the age of 85.
Hey, let me tell you about my book, Shrink. For most of my adult life, I weighed a little over 100 pounds. Not much more than in this picture taken when I was about 17 and considering becoming a jockey. But as is often true, once I crossed into my 40s, extra weight came and it stayed. For years I tried to lose, instead gained, and ended up 153 pounds. And I'm embarrassed to show you this video. Then I learned that it isn't about calories and exercise, but instead it's about what you eat. You might say, sure, ice cream makes you fat. But there were surprises, things like orange juice not being such a wise choice if you're trying to lose weight. So I just made some basic changes to what I ate, not how much, and the weight just fell off. Now, nearly 3 years later, it is still off. And don't misunderstand, I'm eating foods I like, not bamboo shoots. Friends ask me how I did it so often, I put it in a book. It's available as an ebook for all platforms, and the print edition is available at barnesandnoble.com and amazon.com. Hey, you can shrink too.
All right, welcome back. Remember, you can watch all of our previous episodes at tinyurl.com/Bruce Channel or at our Facebook page. You can also write to us at thebrucechannel@yahoo.com. All right. I did recently finish a book that I'd recommend. It came out last fall, and it's called Giant of the Senate by former Senator Al Franken. He's a former senator, of course, because he became part of the Me Too movement, kicked off, in his case, by that famous, maybe infamous, that picture of him leering at a woman's breasts while she was asleep. Bad taste, yeah. But it was taken back when he was a comic, not a statesman. Anyway, it was a great read for a number of reasons. One, he explained actually how laws are made in Congress. Yeah, you don't want to know how sausage or laws are made. It's worse than the cliche would imply. You really don't want to know, except you should know. It's crazy. And I'm not speaking of bitter partisanship. That's toxic enough. I'm speaking of the procedures, the rules. Two, he points out how much time he and virtually every other member of Congress has to spend talking to rich people to get donations. It's obscene, hours and hours a day. I'd recommend the book right there for those 2 reasons alone. Regardless of your politics, if you knew that they spent so much time asking for money, you would call for public funding, and elections never have campaign contributions again. 3, he was a supporter and friend of Minnesota Senator Paul Wellstone, who was killed in a plane crash back in 2002. And he had a great quote of Senator Wellstone, and it's simple. When we all do well, we all do well. Think about it. with less disparity between the rich and the poor, good things happen. You know? If healthcare is a right, fewer people go broke, and hospitals don't have to charge more to make up for the costs that some people can't pay. If there's more money in more people's pockets, more cars are sold. We need fewer policemen. If more cars are sold, by the way, auto workers make more money, and then they'll buy things. When people have money in their pocket, they'll go out to restaurants more often. It's a circuit. When we all do well, we all do well. The other quote from the book is it's by Franken himself. It's from a short chapter about Senator Ted Cruz. In a future episode, I may explain some of Cruz's shady and slimy tricks, but I'll just quote one. Senator Al Franken said about Ted Cruz, "The thing you have to understand about Ted Cruz is I like Ted Cruz a lot more than most of my colleagues, and I hate Ted Cruz." All right, in the time since we last got together, I've seen a couple of movies of consequence. Top of the list is The Post, big box office, directed by Steven Spielberg, Tom Hanks, Meryl Streep. Of course, it's a blockbuster. You may have seen it when it was out. I almost never go to the theater, so I'm always months behind. The Post is a very gripping film, even though it's based on historical events for which we know the outcome. In that way, it's a lot like Apollo 13, which also happened to have Tom Hanks. But the story behind the making of the film was pretty neat. So it's March 2017. Steven Spielberg has got his eyes and getting ready to make a film, and he gets sent the screenplay for The Post. His reactions, "I don't need this right." But it was a compelling story. And then, given the current political climate, he thought it was important to remind the American people of American duplicity at the very highest levels. It occurs. So he made his calls, and they started shooting like in early May, just 6 weeks later. That's impossible. That's an impossible schedule to adhere to, and yet somehow they did. They didn't build a set. They leased a big building. They filled it with metal desks and typewriters and found the period clothes, and really it was great. And somehow it got made and edited and printed in time to get into the theaters by the end of the year. I'd recommend it highly. Oh, interesting bit of trivia. John Williams, who else, did the score. Last year was the 42nd year that John Williams was working with Steven Spielberg. Just think of some of the titles. Jaws, that was the first. Schindler's List, Jurassic Park films, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Catch Me If You Can, Lincoln, Saving Private Ryan, Hook, the Indiana Jones films, Amistad, Warhorse. That's a partial list. But the trivia is this. In all of their previous collaborations, after some time, John Williams would have Steven Spielberg over. They'd get together, and John Williams would play the piano, some of the themes, some of the melodies, some of the ideas he had. Spielberg probably always said, yeah. But the point is, he always knew what he was getting in advance. This time, because of the super short notice and the no time to work with, the first time Steven Spielberg heard any of the music was when they were in the studio recording it. Williams would conduct, and he'd look over, and Spielberg would say, yeah. But never before in all of their films together was it recorded without Spielberg having heard it first. All right, some sports news before we go. Baseball is in full swing. The All-Star game ballots are now out. The game's more than a month away, but you can vote. In horse racing, Justify won the first 2 legs of the Triple Crown, and in another 2 weeks, we'll try to win the Belmont Stakes in New York. That's the long one, 1.5 miles. Although Canadian football is just 2 weeks away, we're still months away from the NFL season, and yet there are NFL headlines every day. There was the draft, then the teams had the rookie camp, and those drafted and those rookies unsigned or undrafted, they get to see how it works. That's followed by what's going on now, the OTAs, or official team activities. They run and they stretch. There's no real contract. They throw, they catch, but they're not mandatory. But both defenses and offenses are so complex anymore. Wise players show up. You don't want to get cut, you better know what you're... Well, all right, Tom Brady doesn't go to OTAs, but he's in no danger of not making the team, and he knows the playbook. And training camp, my woeful, pitiful, unlucky at love, or anything else, Cleveland Browns, they are the team that has been selected for this year's HBO series Hard Knocks. And that'll come on later when training camp officially opens in July. One other football note. The league has made rules changes to try and cut down on head injuries. They've had a lot of bad press regarding head injuries. So the way you tackle, the way you block, you cannot use your head anymore. They've also changed the kickoff rules because lots of injuries happen, I can't help this question. This is just such an obvious question. Since we now know, there is no doubt, what happens when the head gets shaken up badly inside a skull, since we know definitively, can anyone tell me why there is still boxing or MMA or cage fighting? Really, why? All right, lastly, for the last 4 years, the NBA Finals picked the Golden State Warriors against the Cleveland Cavaliers 4 years in a row. Cleveland lost the first one in Actually, they should have won it. They lost it in overtime, but it was a fluke. They should have won it in regulation. All right, first game was in California. So will the second game be. That's on Sunday at 8 p.m. All right, upcoming this week, every June 4th is Hug Your Cat Day. So to paraphrase the old Army phrase, hug 'em if you got 'em. And Saturday, the second Saturday of June, every day, is World Gin Day. Cheers. May your upcoming week be the best one you ever had.